Radio Bypass, bringing you rock and roll music that deserves to be heard. Discover new bands. Here's some old favorites on Radio Bypass.
Our guest today has played with Lion, Dio, Whitesnake, Burning Rain, currently a member of the Dead Daisies, and I'm so happy to have him joining us today, guys. Please welcome Doug Aldrich to Radio Bypass. How you doing,
Hey,
Doug?
Ralph. I'm good, man. How are you, Ralph?
I'm great. Thank you for taking some time for Radio Bypass. I really appreciate you being here, Doug.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. This is a great podcast.
Well, thank you. I was so happy. I got to see you at NAMM. Saw you jamming with my buddy Jared James Nichols and Marco Mendoza. That was great. I saw you at the Ultimate Jam Night Jam as well. You got to play with my friend Mitch Perry. That was awesome. And Marco. And it was just so great to see you out because I hadn't really known how you're doing. I mean, I know we've had some updates. I know you had a cancer diagnosis. And it was really great to see you out in action and feeling better. So I thought, if you don't mind, give us a health update. How's everything going with that?
Everything's good. I got done with all the radiation treatments in December, and then it's just been a quick, been a quick 6 weeks or whatever. It's just flown by. But I've been, feeling good. Everything's kind of, getting back to normal. I'm starting to go to the gym a little bit and work on my, my muscles and stuff and getting going again like that. So I'm good. I've been playing a lot, and there's a few little issues that pop up. Things, I get some swelling sometimes, or some, after they do that surgery on you, there's some, restructuring of your nasal cavity and stuff like that in your throat. So there's like a little bit to get used to, but I can't complain. I'm doing really good. And after what I went through, definitely feeling blessed.
That's awesome. And the fatigue's not bad because, I know a lot of folks, as the radiation builds up in your system, you feel super fatigued.
I was when I was doing it. It went away pretty quick. It went away, the fatigue. I mean, literally, you would do radiation every day for 15 minutes, and then they would give you Saturday and Sunday off. Mm-hmm. And man, I was just like so happy when it was Friday. I could look forward to Saturday, just not having to go there. And then by Sunday, I'd start to feel a little better. Otherwise, I mean, I was definitely taking naps every day. But after a couple of weeks of being done with it, I feel my energy's back, So nice. I've been taking it easy in the gym because I don't want to strain anything. I've done that in the past where I'm like getting ready for a tour. I've started to do some, heavy weights, and I pull something in, and it's like I got an issue for 6 months for it to come back. So I'm taking it pretty easy, but feeling good, and yeah, overall I can't complain at all.
That's awesome. That's so good. And has there been an update yet from the doctors? They think they got everything. Are you clear, or you don't know?
I don't know if I'm clear. I mean, I guess it takes 5 or 7 years before you're actually clear. But the doctors, they did the surgery, was really good. Everything was positive, and they fried me really good for 6 weeks. So I'm pretty sure everything else that was left over is gone. But I got some blood work done last week. We'll see what that says. And then I got to get a PET scan. And that's a full body scan again to determine if everything's good. Excuse me. Sorry.
It was in your throat, but no damage to your vocal cords or anything? No, you're all good.
No, I mean, I think I sound pretty similar to what I did. It was on my tonsil. So it was they removed my tonsil on one side, and then the lymph nodes on the inside of my neck. But like they took 30 lymph nodes. But yeah, my voice sounds pretty similar, and I can sing. Not that I do a lot of singing with the Dead Daisies, but I can do it. I can do it.
Good. Well, that's great. Well, I'm really happy to get a positive update like that from you. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Now, I know the Dead Daisies have some European dates in March. Are you going to be able to participate in those?
Yeah, for sure. We leave at about 3. Well, guess it's about 3.5 weeks. We will start in Germany. We're going to do a couple days rehearsal. We're going to put together. We got a new set list that we're going to do just because the band was over there in October or October or November. I forgot. October, I think it was. Anyways, the band was there, so we need to put together a new set list and keep it fresh and hit some places that they didn't go when I was home. I had Red Beach actually filling, which was great. And but yeah, so I'm excited about that. That's in March. We've got some dates in June, some festivals and stuff in Europe, and then there's talk of a few things in September, and then again in November. So, but people can always check out on the deaddaisies.com all the updates about where dates are and what's being, promoted and stuff.
Right. Sure. Of course. Okay. Well, good. Yeah. I just wasn't sure if that was too soon. When I saw the March dates, I wasn't sure if that was too soon for you to be back out joining the band at that point or not. Uh-oh. Oh, you're back.
I'm sorry. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Excellent. All right. Well, there you go, Europe. You get to see Doug jamming with the Dead Daisies in just a month or so.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And then that's probably a little bit of a good segue to what I wanted to talk about, which is your new signature amp. I imagine that'll make a visit to Europe with you. So this was just released, right? It's the Blackstar DA 100 Ruby for your
yeah.
dog.
Yeah. It's ruby red. It's ruby red, and it's ruby because it's a powerhouse like her. She's just like, she's only 9 years old, but she's just killing it in her sports and stuff. So I was just like looking for inspiration, and they asked what should we call it, and I thought DA 100, 100-watt amp, and then they said, well, maybe elaborate something. We'll come up with some name, nickname. So I said Ruby, and they're like, yeah, that's great. But I love the amp, and Blackstar did an amazing job on it. They killed it. I mean, I was touring with their stuff for the last couple of years and really enjoying it a lot, and didn't really need, it wasn't like in need of anything different. I was super happy with what they had sent me. I didn't think anything of it, but they thought, why don't we do something special, just on your own, like a signature thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's pretty cool to have a company like Blackstar offer that. So we started talking. I asked them for a couple little changes in terms of there's a few little technical things, a foot switchable effects loop. All these amps nowadays have effects loops, but I liked it that I wanted to get it on a foot switch on my pedal board so that I wasn't have to run audio all the way, from the amp to the floorboard. I can just keep the audio in the back, keep the cables short, have it plugged into the amp, and then I can use the on-off switch on the pedal board to control it. And then some frequency things, we did some stuff on the mid-range that was a little tweaked, did a little bit of biasing change. It was really cool. They brought the amp that I was using on tour, and then they had a little circuit board. It was actually a circuit board on a piece of cardboard that was on top of the amp, and it had some adjustments so you could change the frequency or the bias or the whatever. And so we tweaked that, and then they went back and got it fabricated. And then the next thing was finding the proper color Tolex, because I didn't want it to be a red, because there's lots of red amps, and I didn't want it to be black. I wanted it to have it. So I wanted it to basically kind of look dark and black, but when the light hits it, it kind of pops. Right. And that's what they got. Yeah. So it's really cool.
It looks great. Sounded great. When I got to hear you play through it, sounded amazing. And you kind of answered one of my questions, because I was thinking, I knew you'd been using Blackstar for a while because I've seen you with Blackstar gear on stage before. And I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered it. What's different about your signature model from what, you had been using? And then, did I understand correctly, in that amp, there is something switchable where you can get kind of the British sound, kind of the American sound, or kind of a mixture of the two? Is that right?
Yeah, there's some aspects to what has been commonly associated with the British sound that started with, some of the amps like Marshall, for example, and Blackstar has their own sort of British sound that um, is their own. It's like when you play through a Blackstar, you play through a Marshall, you play through another British amp, Vox, for example. They all have different things about them, but there is a similarity in terms of sometimes the top end is a little bit more of it's a little more shelved at a certain point, and then some of the American amps like the Fenders and stuff like that. There's a little bit more of a
They're more
brighter,
bright. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a crystally top end. So they have this knob on there called ISF, and it basically you can blend it how much of the British or the American that you want, and they're both great. I use them both. Depends on the situation. Live, I kind of tend towards a little bit less of the top end, but sometimes in the studio you really want to get some more crystalline top. So sorry about the helicopter, guys. I'm in the kind of a flight path here for the LAPD.
It didn't sound too loud, so you were okay. I had a dog barking in the background too, so
I don't hear it. Good. So yeah. So anyway, it's there's that, and then there's the other feature on those amps. There's three things that are really unique about those Blackstars. One is the ISF control, which is what we just spoke of. The other thing is that they put a switch on the front of it that goes from 10 watts you can switch it down to 10 watts. You can have your settings, and say you want to, tweak your settings or stuff, you just can, or practice. You want to practice in your house with the same sound. Mm-hmm. You can bring that switch down, and it replicates what the amp would sound like at 100 watts, but when it's only using 10 watts.
Wow, that's like a very useful feature.
Yeah, it's great because at home, you don't want to be blasting your ears in the house and everybody, and it's still plenty loud. I mean, you can crank it still at 10 watts. It sounds amazing. And in fact, there's actually, for recording, there's some benefit to having it be on 10 watts and turning the master volume way up, because it creates it puts a different load on the tubes, and it's unique. So it's something that's really cool to be messing with.
And then change the tonality then?
Yeah, because you're hitting the tubes hard, but they're basically saturating the output down from that point. When it's on 100 watts, you're maybe not hitting them that hard. Maybe it's loud, maybe you're hitting them a little bit, but not the same as if you turn it down to 10 watts and crank the master. It's a different sound.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty cool to experiment with, especially with this amp. You can take this 100-watt top, and you can bring it right into your living room and plug it directly into your computer and run and get all these sounds, which brings up the third point, which is great, is they have a feature called Cab Rig, which is excuse me, it's basically XLR out and would go directly into your interface of your computer rig, whatever you're using, and there are 3 cabinets preloaded into it. And then there's software that you can go in and manipulate the microphones, and you can add different cabinets or whatever. But the 3 cabinets that come preloaded are really great. The basic one is a basic 4x12 Blackstar with in my case, it's got the British vintage 30s selection, the British version. And then you go down to the next position. It's the same cabinet. It's a little bit brighter and a little bit opens up on the bottom end a little bit. And then the third one goes to the next level, which is basically wide open top and bottom end. And so for live, I really like the main one that's a little bit shelved, or it's basically just a little darker, because it seems like live, there's always plenty of top end, mm-hmm. And then the front of house guy's going to do his own thing. But for me, when I'm listening in my ears, that cabinet sounds perfect. And
nice.
And generally recording at home and stuff, that cabinet's great. But then you can experiment. Depends on, a lot of times you do multiple guitars. It's nice to have a different cab sound, or obviously you can change the front end as well. But It's a great thing, man. And so to have a 100-watt top, you don't have to run a speaker. You can run it with headphones. You can run it quiet on the 10 watts, or you can run it into your computer and monitor it through that and get a bazillion sounds out of this thing. It's great.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I mean, I like all the flexibility that's built into this.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's got way more flexibility than I need, to be honest with you. It captures like, but it's fun, you know, like I love the idea of just plugging into an amp and not having to mess around with the controls. I love that, you know,
Right.
because the controls sometimes can get me personally, the controls can kind of get me into trouble. I start turning things way too far. You know, there's sensitivity in these knobs, and I go crazy, and then somebody will go, dude, you're like, just touch it, you know, and then see what happens. And it's like, oh, that sounds good. Now
Right.
touch it again. See if it gets a little better or a little worse. And I'm like, that's not my nature. My nature is just grab it and crank it, you know. So I can get myself into a mess, but all the sounds that I've gotten out of these amps are totally usable for any kind of new metal, all the way to jazz, to obviously blues. You can darken it up and get a sick, really bluesy sound. It's a great amp. I got nothing to say about it but good things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and guy, if there's any guitar players listening and you want to check this amp out, I highly recommend it. I heard it. It sounds absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I was really impressed with it. As soon as I heard you playing out of it, I'm like, oh, that's got to be his new amp, you know. And then I looked and saw that it was. But yeah, it's just got a beautiful tone. It sounds
And
great. And then when I
the
was
Black
reading
the
some of the
Black Star
specs,
got. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off
Oh,
there.
that's
Sorry.
okay. Yeah, no.
I was just gonna say the Black Star guys are really it's a British family. It's funny, man. They're so British, and it reminds me of the early days at Marshall when Jim was there. It wasn't early days for him, but my early days at Marshall when Jim was there. Um, a lot of these guys came from Marshall, and they are carrying on that tradition that Jim started in their own way, in a fresh new way. But they're great guys, great support. You can ask Jared. Jared, you know, I was talking to him at the show. He goes, man, you know, everybody was offering me amp deals and stuff, and he goes, why? Why would I leave Blackstar? They do everything I need, you know, and anywhere I go, they send me an amp, and you know, it's great. And I can concur totally.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think Blackstar seems to be a great company, and maybe they're going to surpass Marshalls. You won't see as many Marshalls on stages anymore because I think their stuff does sound great. Um, but Marshall, I think, is what we all grew up with, though, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what
No,
we used to.
I love the guys at Marshall. They're great guys, and I still own a dozen or more Marshalls. Just, you know, it's like, and I don't need them, but I like having access in case.
Sure.
Right now, I loaned a couple amps to a buddy of mine because I got the Blackstar in my studio, and I'm just fixated on it. I don't have the Ruby yet, which is interesting. I'm going to do a photo session in a couple days with the amp for Blackstar, and then I get to take it home. So
Nice.
I'm still just messing around with the original app that it came from, which is called, in case anybody wants to know, it's HT 100 stage, HT stage 100. It's called, and it's just the same basic layout. It's three channels, and each channel's got two voices. And originally, I was running like one channel, and then I hit for solos the second channel. But now I'm kind of finding that if I set up each channel as being a different amp, and then I can hit the second voice as a solo for that amp. Now I got three different amps going. It's a little different.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I just, like I said earlier, I just love the sound of the flexibility that's built into this. Man.
Me too, man.
Well, there you go, guys. Head to your favorite music store that carries Blackstar and check out DA100, baby.
Yeah.
DA100 Ruby. Um, so now you've got the signature amp, and then I wanted to ask you about signature guitars because I thought at some point I had heard you had a Jackson model, but I think it might have only been in Japan. And then I thought there was also maybe an ESP model. but I'm really not sure the things that I think I've picked up because I read so many guitar
Yeah.
magazines and this and that. Sometimes I get my facts a little mixed up. But has there been and is there currently a Doug Aldrich signature guitar?
There is not actually right now. I basically, my story, to do it really quick, because I grew up on Les Pauls. My first good guitar was a Les Paul. I should say I grew up on a Les Paul because I only had one. I had a gold top and I loved it. It was great. Beautiful sound and everything. But eventually, the Super Strat started to take over. And one of the key things, one of the key players in the Super Strat was Eddie. And Eddie put a humbucker into the Stratocaster. It hadn't really been done on a wide scale, if at all. And so I bought a Stratocaster and stuck a humbucker in it. And around that time, I had the Strat and Les Paul. And around that time, I saw Randy Rhoads play. And Randy was quintessential Les Paul player for hard rock and the new age of, hard rock.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got to LA and I had my Les Paul, I had my Strat, and I started to kind of lean more towards the Strat because just at that time people would, say, "Oh, you're a Randy clone or whatever," something like that. And I didn't play like Randy. I couldn't play like Randy. I probably was trying to look like him a little bit, but so I wanted to differentiate myself. So I kind of put the Les Paul down a little bit, and then eventually got hooked up with Jackson when Grover Jackson was there, and which was exciting because I knew that Randy had worked with him before he passed, and then we took one of his Super Strats called the Soloist, and he basically welcomed me to the family and said, "Look, I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of guitars, but I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a guitar every year. You can, if you whatever you need, I'll give you a backup for your main guitar." And but he really liked me, and we were really close. I'd order a guitar, and like 6 months later, I'd get a call from him saying like, "Hey, he called me or he texted me, but he wouldn't say anything. But this time he called and he'd go, 'Hey, you want to come have lunch?'" And that meant like, "Oh, the guitar's ready."
Right.
And so I would be like, "Yeah, when can we?" And he goes, "How's Monday?" I'm like, "Yeah." It should be a Friday. So I'd be super stoked about going down to see him. And I was really into the guitars and they played like crazy. I mean, you could shred on those Jackson Soloists. Eventually, I had gotten known in Japan a little bit from the first band Lion. And Grover was around when Lion broke up, because we couldn't get off a record deal and our drummer got injured in a motorcycle crash.
Yeah.
And he was trying to get me hooked up with Dio actually. And I just wasn't really ready to jump ship yet. And, but I had gotten a reputation in Japan from Lion, and they're the ones that said, we want to do a signature thing with you. And I think around that time, it was the early 90s. I think around that time, Grover sold the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did the deal with the Japanese. We did the guitars and they were great. But when Grover left, it just it started to slowly fade away. And then, the grunge thing hit, and it was like the Jackson guitars weren't really accepted as much. People weren't playing them as much. They were kind of going back to, the older stuff.
Right.
And so at that point, I went back to my Strat. And I love, the single coil sound as well. So I was featuring more single coils during that time. But eventually, every recording, I'd always use a Les Paul. And it got to working with Dio in 2000, 2001, something like that. And I had a Super Strat for his songs that needed it, because I think Vivian used that. And then I could still play some of the Rainbow stuff with that Super Strat. But when it came to Sabbath, I needed to bump it up a little bit. So then I broke out the Les Paul. And then it just sounded killer, man. It was heavy, and I fell in love with it again. And when we recorded our record, I used a Strat on one side and a Les Paul on the other, and it was kind of a nice mix because the Les Paul had the heaviness and the Strat had the clarity, and
Right.
that's what we did on Killing the Dragon. So it was that mix of those two guitars. But then when Whitesnake came calling, David was like, "I'm so happy you're playing the Les Paul because not many people are playing them right now." And I said, "Well, I I love it for the aspect of playing the heavier stuff." And he goes, "Well, we used it a lot, and all my guitar players use Les Paul, so I love that you're using it." And I brought a Strat on tour, but Reb was also playing a Super Strat, and so he pretty much had all that stuff covered, the whammy bar and the more delicate tones. And then I just went for the heavier over the top Les Paul sound.
Mm-hmm.
And around 2014, I was working with Gibson, and we were talking about doing a signature guitar, and we had done a prototype, and I still have it. And then we were going to do a little update to that prototype, and then the company got bought, and they scrapped everything they were doing. And the second prototype was apparently done, and I heard stories that when some of that stuff, they didn't want some of that stuff coming out, so they just they wood chipped it.
Oh, that's
But
painful to hear.
I'm always hoping that somebody grabbed that guitar before and has it before they left, the company. But so right now I don't have anything. I just do my own thing, basically. Regarding ESP, I was working with ESP a little bit. And they made me a couple of tellies that are great. They're humbucker-based tellies that I still have them, and they're killer guitars. And I also have a Ron Wood Telecaster from ESP that's great. But just the front of house engineer for the Dead Daisies, we travel pretty light, so I only have three guitars with me. I carry one, and I have two on the in the cases.
Right.
And front of house engineer just loves my Les Pauls, so that's pretty much been the thing with the Dead Daisies.
Gotcha. Well, and there's no denying how great they sound, right? So,
I just love them. I mean, it feels like I just still feel like I'm a kid. I'm staring at Les Pauls right now, and I say Les Pauls because I've been blessed enough to get a few. But
do you still have that
you know,
gold top that you started with?
no, no, I did sell that gold top in the I guess it was in the late '70s, early '80s. I had a guitar built from scratch at a music store, and I ordered this guitar, and it turned out to be beautiful and amazing. But eventually, I sold it too. I mean, in the beginning, I was kind of moving and shaking with guitars, and so I don't have anything from the old days. Even that Strat, I don't have anymore. I wish I did. That one Strat was really cool, and in the end, I don't even know where it went, but I wish I had it.
I bet. Would you consider yourself a guitar collector at all? Or
A little bit. I mean, I'm a more of a player grade collector because I don't really want to collect. I'm not interested in collecting a guitar that's just going to sit around and even if it's going to make money or whatever. I'm not, and I don't take good enough care of stuff to be a curator or something like how somebody like Joe Bonamassa is. He's got the most pristine versions of everything, and he's got his player ones that he plays, and then he's got his pristine ones. I'm not in that. I'm not in that game for a couple reasons. One, it's crazy expensive. You gotta really be smart with how you buy and sell guitars to get into that collector mode. So mine are all stuff that I got deals on because they've either been refretted or have different pickups, or in one case, one got repainted. But they're all great. They're all killer, and they play amazing. I mean, like I got a '59 Les Paul Jr. that it's my best playing guitar. It's worth a decent amount of money, but probably half of what it would be worth if it had the original frets.
Mm-hmm.
But it plays so amazing, and I use it all the time because it plays great. If it had the original frets, I wouldn't use it. It'd be
Right.
worth more money. But yeah, so stuff like that, I bought that guitar. It was already player grade. Some parts had been changed or something, so I put them back to stock except for the frets, and it's insane. And I just recently bought a '53 Les Paul Gold Top. Uh, they started making Les Pauls in 1952, so it's pretty old, but it had cracked headstock. So, and it had some other stuff boogered up. It had already been refretted. So my buddies at this music store, Chicago Music Exchange,
Yeah,
Chicago
I know
Music
Chicago
Exchange.
Music Exchange. Yeah.
My buddy Andrew called me and goes, "Hey, Doug, I got a guitar with your name all over." I'm like, "Really?" Because he knows I couldn't afford to spend for a pristine one and really want to change it anyways. And he goes, "Yeah, I got this guitar. It's all changed and it's different, but it's got a thing, man. It sings." And so he gave me a great deal on it and I got it. I'm super happy with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you sound with guitars kind of like how I've been in the past with cars. I don't have any classic cars now, but when I have, I've never wanted one to have it sit in the garage. I wanted it to be a driver, you know.
Yeah,
So it sounds like
exactly.
kind of the same with the guitar. Don't need it to sit in the case. I need to play it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, if you're in that game and you've got a classic car or guitar or whatever, plane, boat, you want it to be in a museum or something so that it doesn't get messed up, and then it's looked after. Like for example, David Lowy, who is the guitar player in Dead Daisies with me, he collects airplanes, and he's got a bunch of really valuable old airplanes that I don't know how he got into it, but like I say, you got to be good at buying and selling.
Right.
Buy low, and if you get a deal, somebody wants to buy something, you sell high, you make money, then you invest in this other thing that you want. So he's got these planes, but they're in a museum, so they're in climate control and they're looked after. I don't know what they do to them, but they make sure that they're good.
Right.
But then you got to have your car or plane or guitar that you want to take out on Sunday and rip on it. So
Right.
yeah, that's the thing. Cars are all those things are difficult because it takes a long time to get your money back. As soon as
Mhm.
you take the car off the lot, man, it like what is it, 50% it drops?
It's a big drop, especially on brand new. It's a little less severe if you buy a pre-owned vehicle, but you buy a
Yeah,
brand new one, yeah, 30% the day you pull away, the second you pull away.
it's crazy. You
It
just
is
went off the
crazy.
went off the lot, and it's like, what? I lost half my money.
Yep. Yep.
But then 25, 35, 45 years later, that same car, if it's got low mileage and original everything, it can be worth,
Can be
a
worth a lot.
million dollars maybe. Who knows?
Yep. I kick myself all the time for a couple of cars I owned when I was young that I wish I would have hung on to. Like I had a 1970 Chevy Monte Carlo.
Oh man.
Thing was awesome and it was still in great shape when I sold it. And I am so mad at myself that I didn't keep it because now, I see some ones like mine. It had this great pearl paint job too. It was a fantastic car.
What
And I
color
see
was it?
silver,
Nice.
but a pearl silver. So depending on the street lights and things like that, sometimes you might see little hints of lavender, little hits of pink in it as well,
Yeah.
depending on how the light's hitting.
Yeah.
It was a killer paint job. I when I bought it, it already had that paint job done at a body shop in Chicago, but they did a fantastic paint job. It was three coats, three layers. It was just
Wow.
beautiful. Car was so fast. Um, it only had the 350, but it had a lot of get up and go. And
That was a cool car. My buddy had one. I think it was a 71 or two, but and I don't know what engine it had, but it was badass. It wasn't cornering the best, but a
no,
straight line,
little
man.
loose.
But the good thing is it had a nice back seat. You could, it had room in it.
Yep.
It was cool.
Yep. It's a great car. And I see them now, I haven't looked recently, like in the last year or two, but I do keep an eye on auctions a little bit sometimes for classic cars, just for my own amusement and
Yeah.
knowledge. And I've seen some that look pretty similar to mine, same, pretty much the same specs, but not as cool of a paint job as this car had. And granted, who knows what the condition would be like now if I still had it, but I see them going for, sometimes 40, 50, 60 grand sometimes.
Yeah,
Like, dang,
they're redone or whatever, or they're original. They got matching numbers.
when they're original, yeah.
If you could have one car, like right now, one car. It doesn't have to be like I know it might change tomorrow, but like right now, one car, what would you get? What would you get?
Boy, that is tough because I love so many. But since I moved to California 3.5 years ago or whatever, I've been here now, I thought it would be kind of cool cruising around in these mountains and stuff to have a convertible again. Because I don't currently own a convertible. So maybe I would say, boy, it's a tough one. Maybe an old, like a 67 Mustang convertible, or maybe a buddy of mine had a 67 Camaro convertible. Would be a toss up between those two.
All right, I would go with. I just saw at the car show. I forget what it's called. The one in Phoenix it just happened, but somebody is it called Barrett something?
Yeah, Barrett's is a big one for classic
Yeah,
cars. Yeah.
somebody had redone a '63 split window
Oh my
Corvette,
God. Oh my God. That would be a dream too.
and they it wasn't like it wasn't, although it was a stock one would be amazing. This one had been kind of put onto a newer chassis, and oh man, it was just they just did it just right. It looked classic, but you could tell it was not. It was like a daily. You can make it a daily driver,
Right.
and it just looked freaking amazing with that split window. It was just insane.
Did you see what it went for out of the
I
chute?
didn't. I didn't. I forget. I think it was. Um, a couple 100,000, something like that. But I mean, a real split window would be in probably a million, right, or something maybe.
Probably now at this point. Yeah. But
Like I
so,
went
so if you had
low
your
money.
choice of Eddie, would that be your pick right now then? 63 split window vet?
Well, that particular one, because it had been painted in a pearl white that looked insane. Like it was a feature in this one magazine. They featured it, and I saw the pictures, and it was just like it was ready to go, man. It was like you could daily driver it, you
Now
know.
I got to look for this car. Was that in Hemmings? The magazine you saw it in was it Hemmings?
Um, it was in no, I don't think so. It was in a magazine that it was in like a what's the one with all the really expensive cars? Rob Report or something. It was
Oh,
something
Rob
like that.
Report.
It wasn't Rob
Report.
Report,
It
but it
could
was
be.
something. It was something like that where it had all expensive cars. It had you know, a lot of Porsches, a lot of Bentleys, a lot of Range Rovers and stuff like that. It didn't have
Mhm.
a lot of. It didn't have a lot of American muscle cars in it, but a couple, and that was one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a book. I was at the car wash and I grabbed it and I looked at it and I brought it home and I was, whoa. The guy whoever did it took two 63s. He took a convertible, which would get them both, and then you can take the convertible. He had a
Right.
convertible and he had the hard top, and they had done them both exactly the same, ready for that auction. It happened last month, or
Oh man.
yeah, it happened last month.
Well, thanks for giving me some homework because now I'm going to be searching for that and see if I can find that vehicle. I want to see it.
Yeah, well, you could probably. I'll bet it's online. 63. Like I say, they're on a different chassis. They've been totally redone.
You said it went through in Arizona, right? Was where the
I believe it was in Phoenix, Arizona, was where the car show was, and I think it was the Barrett something one, not the one that they always have, not Merkham that's always on TV.
right. All right. All right. I'm going to do some digging. All right. Well, back to music. Lion, the band. First of all, I always thought that band kind of got overlooked. Great band and great music. We used to play it on my old radio station. Uh,
Thanks, thank you.
so you at least got airplay in one place in Chicago anyway. But great record. My favorite tune has always been Never Surrender. But one thing I was never sure of, because I know you and Jerry Best, the bass player, were
Yeah.
both from the East, and you ended up in LA. Is Lion what brought you here, or did you guys have this band there and then came here to California? How did?
No, basically, Jerry and I were friends back there. We met in high school, and his brother was a drummer, plays drums, and him and his brother were looking for musicians to collaborate with. And I was probably, still, I mean, I was definitely still trying to learn how to make my way around the guitar. But they felt I was a cool guy or whatever. And so we decided to get together at their place and start learning songs. That's what you did. You just learn songs and play together and jam and go home, do your homework, come in, try and get it as close as you could. And we did that for a couple of years. And then getting out of high school, I knew that they had talked about their dad was going to be moving to LA at some point. We didn't know when. And so we weren't in a band, but we were just friends jamming. And then I decided, well, I'm going to go to LA as well because A, I know those guys are coming at some point, and B, I just loved it. I had been out here a few times and had a kind of a distant aunt and uncle that were always super kind and would put me up or whatever. So they agreed to take me in for a couple of weeks till I got a place. And I came out, supposed to go to Santa Monica College, and I just didn't go. I bet by that time I was 18. I was hooked on living my own life and playing guitar all the time, and school was just going to get in the way.
Right.
Which I would never recommend for anybody else if they got kids and they're talking about, hey man, Doug did it, you could do it. It's like I got super lucky, man. I had some rough times too. I mean, like
sure.
But that's what happened. I came out, and then Jerry and his brother came out, and we formed a band called Lion. Oh no, sorry, we formed a band called Mansfield. Then Mansfield made its rounds around LA, and we were getting, a little bit of a buzz happening, and I got a call from the guys from the drummer from Steeler, Mark Edwards. And Mark said Yngwie was going to Alcatraz, and he was doing a new band, starting a new band called Lion. He had a great singer that was very much like David Coverdale from Whitesnake. And I had only heard Whitesnake a little bit from I think maybe the Slide It In record had just come out, maybe, or something. And we started this band called Lion. And when I went to the audition, I said, who's playing bass? They said, we don't have a bass player yet. And I go, well, let me bring, my guy's really good. So I brought Jerry, and we just decided to make a band right then. So that was Lion. And we recorded our first record, and unfortunately the label just didn't support it. But we did get a good push in Japan, which set up some good things for me. And I probably remember, if you told me the station, it might jog a memory, because there was only a few stations that were playing the stuff, but they really liked it.
Our call letters were WVVX. We were 103.1 FM.
It sounds familiar. In Chicago area?
Yes.
Sounds familiar. And when we had done a couple of videos, or we did a video, I believe, I can't remember. And it was getting good airplay on MTV and stuff. But we weren't getting support. The label wasn't going to put us on the road, and there's no way to break a band like that unless you're touring, so we ended up getting off the label. And that's when I kind of wasn't ready to jump out of the band into other options. That's what Grover Jackson wanted me to do. He wanted me to join Dio. And I went and played with Ronnie, and Ronnie actually offered me the gig in 1990 or 89, somewhere in there. But I wasn't ready to go. I didn't want to leave my bros. We were all living together in an apartment, and it just didn't feel like the right time to cut out. Like, I would have definitely felt guilty about it. Now, I would look back and go, that probably would have been a good thing to do, and I shouldn't be feeling that way. But at the time, I was, just trying
Nothing
to do
wrong
my
with
best.
loyalty, though. Nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that.
yeah,
Well, that's pretty cool. And then that actually is a great lead-in because then from Lion, you ended up eventually in Dio and then Whitesnake.
yeah.
So you had the opportunity to work with, what many of us consider two of the best hard rock heavy metal singers of all time.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
That had to be a trip for you at the time, I would imagine. Was
it was absolutely. I mean, Ronnie. So after the first time, I stuck it out with my guys, and eventually we broke up, and I kind of made my rounds around doing some sessions for this band or that band, and I toured a little bit here and there. But and then me and the singer from Lion got some stuff going in Japan, a little bit in Europe, but nothing ever really popped, and I was still doing sessions, here in my studio and did all kinds of whatever I could do to make ends meet.
you were a guitar instructor too, right? At a music
That
shop.
that was early on. That was more in the '80s. This
Oh, that
was
was before. Okay.
Yeah. At this point, I had done solo albums and stuff, and I was engineering, learning how to engineer. I had invested in studio equipment. I'd have like in this room, I'd have like rapper guys come over, and um, full bands would come over. I'd set them up in my house and in the garage and have them track live, and it was great, man. I learned a lot.
I
But
bet.
one of the sessions that I did was Bob Kulick asked me to do something on Bob Kulick, who had played with Kiss and Meatloaf, asked me to do a session, and Jimmy Bain was on bass. Jimmy Bain from Dio, and Jimmy and I did the session, and he goes, "Hey, would you be interested in, maybe joining Ronnie at this point?" This was 10 years later or something.
All right.
And I said, "Yeah, man." And like all this time went by, I didn't hear from Ronnie, and uh, I called Jimmy. I'm like, "Man, it's been 6 months. I haven't heard from Ronnie. What's the story?" He goes, "Well, we're just still trying to figure out. We're not sure what's going on with Goldie." And eventually, he called me right before Christmas and said, "Ronnie wants to meet you again." I mean, I didn't even know if he remembered me, but probably he did because Ronnie was very intelligent. We met at a British pub down the street, and he said, you want to play on my record, a couple songs or solo, whatever you want. I go, "No, I want to play on the whole thing. If I'm going to do it, I want to be in the band." He goes, "Okay, great. Start tomorrow." So I went to the studio. It was like, that was the 26th of December, right after Christmas we met. And then 27th, we went back in the studio and kept working. And it was great right from the get-go, man. Ronnie and I hit it off, and he trusted me, and we got that guitar sound with the Les Paul and the Strat, and he was really happy. And definitely the material was heading more in a direction like the first Dio album. And that kind of music was starting to make a little run comeback, too, like bands like Scorpions and Deep Purple and Judas Priest, and a lot of bands were starting to kind of come back, and they were playing a little bit bigger venues. And we made that record. We co-wrote a couple things to finish it off, and then we went on tour with Scorpions and Deep Purple, and we were loving it. Me and Jimmy had gotten super tight, during that time, and touring and doing promo for the album. And then when we rehearsed for 6 weeks for that tour with Dio. And we were tighter than shit, man. We were tight like crazy for that tour. And we were getting a good response. I mean, Ronnie was opening the show, but it was a great tour, playing in 20,000 seat places. And
Sure.
by the end of our set, when Ronnie was doing stuff like Rainbow in the Dark and Heaven and Hell, the place was packed, so we were last in line. By that point, everybody wanted to see Ronnie, and the seats were full. And so we got an offer from the Scorpions that they were going to tour in the following year with Whitesnake. And it was going to be a reform of Whitesnake, who had been gone for a long time. and it was going to be with David Coverdale and John Sykes. And me and Jimmy Bain, at first I was very excited because I was a big fan of Whitesnake and John Sykes too. You know, John
Sure.
he was responsible for the '87 record. I felt like, you know.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Um, and so me and Jimmy were like, "Fuck yeah, this sounds great, man. Let keep playing arenas or sheds or whatever, and playing with Whitesnake and the Scorpions." But Ronnie was like, "No, I'm not doing it. I'm not. I don't want to. We're gonna make a record, and I don't want to be. I'm not an opening act." So now I get it. You know, we were kind of like digging the whole backstage vibe. Was great. It was big. Everyone had their own dressing room. You know, it was nice.
Right. First
And
class.
yeah, everything was first class. We were all on one bus. Our crew and band were on one bus, so that was the only thing that was a little bit tight. Um, but Ronnie said no, and then the tour kept going, and somewhere along the line, somebody told me that Coverdale had been watching me, and I didn't believe him at first, and then somebody said, "Hey, he had somebody here that is asking about you, just to let you know." And a couple days later, I got a phone call, and or no, I met the guy. We played in David's area, and I met his guy, his partner, and he said, "You know, do you want to talk with David?" I go, "Yeah, sure, I'll talk to him." And I didn't really know what to expect because I was the lead guitar player of Dio, and they were talking about Sykes and everything. I'm like, I'm not going to play second to anybody at this point. I'm playing with Dio. And so when David called me, Coverdale called me, and he said, "You know, you want to come up and have lunch?" And I did. And he said, "I want you to, you know, do this tour with me. It's just 2 months." And I go, "You know, I appreciate it, but you got John Sykes. I mean,
What do
you
you
don't
need
need
me
me."
for? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got my gig, you know. He goes, "No, it's not going to work with Sykes. I already talked about it with him, and it's not going to work out. And I want you." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." Well, I said, "Let me talk to Ronnie, and I think, you know, I can probably work it out, you know, if it's 2 months." And Ronnie gave me the blessing, and the 2 months turned into 12 years that I worked with David. And it was just, you know, I didn't mean to be unloyal to Ronnie or anything like that. I loved Ronnie. And I did go back and play with Ronnie a couple times over the years when Goldie was busy. I filled in and we did a couple of DVDs. But the relationship with Coverdale was really, it was just great. Me and him hit it off. And
And there was one studio record, I think, during your tenure, right?
no,
With
we
Whitesnake.
did,
Was it,
no,
or
we
was
did
there two studio?
we did two studio records and a live album with 4 original songs on it. That was the first glimpse of me and David writing together. He wanted to do a live album, and I thought, you know, I had gone back to Dio and was helping Ronnie do some stuff, and Ronnie wanted me to come back in the band, and it somehow got out on social media or Blabbermouth or something that Ronnie wanted me back, and David got a. I was on tour with Ronnie in the UK, and David called me and said, "You know, what's all this?" And I go, "Well, we haven't really talked about anything, but," I said, "You know, you and I, if we're going to make Whitesnake happen, it needs to get some new material. We just can't be playing the hits all the time, you know."
Right.
Which now people live off playing the hits, but at
Yes.
the time we were trying to, you know, rebrand the band and not rebrand it. We were trying to get the band back going again, and I felt like, you know, the audiences were starting to get smaller just playing the hits after 3 years. So he goes, "Well, you and I'll start to write." And we did. And we wrote 4 songs and put out a live album. And those 4 songs were pretty cool. And they got some good attention. But when you make a full album, that's when you're starting to really, you know, be serious. So we wrote a record called Good to Be Bad. And we just got on a roll. And the songs were just really like, if it was, you know, that was 2007. If it was 10 years earlier, or even 8 years earlier, that album would have sold twice as much. It sold, you know, close to 500,000 worldwide, but it worked out great. And then we did another album 2 years later called Forevermore. So all
That's
in
the one I
all,
was thinking of.
yeah, Good to Be Bad had a little bit of a record company problem as well. So, but it was a great record. If you get a chance, you can stream it. Um, and the title track all the way down. I was sitting in this room. I played the riff of the title track. David started singing, and I was just like, oh my God. I was sitting here and looking out the window going, when people hear this shit, it's gonna be killer, Because it was like a mix of the hair metal Whitesnake and the bluesy Whitesnake. It really had aspects of both. It had slide guitar, but it had big fat riffs. And that the record company and David got in a disagreement, and they shelved it for a minute. Then it got re-released, so you can hear it now.
Maybe that's how
But
I
then we
missed that
did,
one then. I don't know, because I missed that album somehow. I think I've got just about every Whitesnake record, but I don't have that.
yeah. It might be released under Still Good to Be Bad now, but it's on Spotify and you can find it. But yeah, Forevermore came out and that did well for us, and then around that time I was going through a breakup, and I was like, I need to. I had been away. I had been 100,000% dedicated to Whitesnake. I mean, to be fair, even when the band was not on the road and we weren't getting paid, I was still writing songs with David and going up to Lake Tahoe planning our next year, what we were going to do. And so I just kind of let my relationship falter, and was never home. And I had a little boy, 4 years old, who, needed a dad, and my ex really needed to go find her calling.
Hmm.
So I let her go, and I got my boy with me, and I took a gig in Vegas with Howard Leese from Heart and Hugh
Oh, is that the
McDonald.
Rock Vault?
Yeah, and that gig was great, man. I was off the road with Whitesnake, so I had my Whitesnake rig there on stage. I could go place with my rig 24 hours a day. Whenever the show wasn't on, I had a key to the stage, and my son was with me. I had a little plastic credit card that basically meant, as an employee of the hotel, I could go eat 24/7 in the hotel kitchen. So like 3 in the morning, if my boy said, "Hey, Dad, can we get a hamburger?" I'd be like, "Yeah, let's go." And it was just amazing. I was together with him 24/7, and it was perfect. And that's when David wanted to do the Purple record. He did a Deep Purple cover record, and I helped him
Mhm.
with some arrangements and some parts and stuff. But I just wasn't super into that aspect, and was really enjoying my cover
Time
gig
with
with
your,
these
yeah,
other guys and with my son with me. And so I just decided it was time to knock her on the head. And I had been around the block enough with Whitesnake where I had gotten my fill of touring. I felt like, I had done anything that I wanted to do on the road. We made great records, although they weren't hit records or something. For some people, they were. Like
sure.
some of the stuff we wrote, like Forevermore, the song Forevermore, I wrote it in this room and brought it to David, and a lot of people use it as their wedding song or whatever. It's really like, cool, or when their baby gets born or something. But so I just felt like time was good for me to knock on the head, and that's what I did. And eventually, a third great vocalist. Now I've worked with Cal Swan from Lion, amazing vocalist, very Coverdale-ish, very Ian Gillan-ish. In fact, he was asked to audition for Deep Purple with Richie Blackmore when they were trying to figure out singers
Right.
at one point. And then later I worked with Kelly Hansen from Hurricane, and then Ronnie, and I've had a great run with singers. And then um, Glenn Hughes called me. I had met Glenn from Ronnie, and he called me and said, "Hey, I'm doing a tour. Um, I want to do like a trapeze type of thing where it's just 3 piece." And I think either his original guitar player had something else going on or something. I don't know why, but Soren Anderson's a great player, and Soren couldn't do it or whatever. And so Glenn asked me to do it. And I, at that point, was a little burned out on playing a cover gig, you know. And then
Right.
I was like, I had already gotten in a new relationship, and you know, things were different. So I thought I'll go do a little run with Glenn, and then that turned into getting an offer to join the Dead Daisies later, and the Dead Daisies was pretty amazing because they said we're going to work 6 months of the year, and then 6 months you're on your own. I thought, well, I can make that work, you know, with my son. And by that time, he
Yeah.
was
Great.
coming in about 6 or whatever.
That was 2016 that you hooked up with the Dead Daisies.
Yeah, the beginning of 2016, we made "Make Some Noise" album in Nashville, Tennessee, with Marty Fredrickson, and it was great, man. We had you know, studio time booked, and we all got together and we just wrote. And Marty is a great songwriter as well, so he could take an idea that we had and he could kind of propose some adjustments to it that were always good, you know.
Mhm.
He always had great
You did some good
ideas.
stuff with Aerosmith, so you know.
Well, a lot of people. I mean, he's written
Yeah.
with everybody, but and his studio had a great vibe too. And so we made "Make Some Noise," and it did really good for us. And then we did a couple years later, we did "Burn It Down." We did some live stuff. Um, then
Covers
John,
record.
yeah,
The covers record.
John Cromie left for a little bit. We did a couple records with Glenn. It was just like everything was full circle. And then Glenn wanted to get back to his thing, and John wanted to come back, and we did "Light 'Em Up" last year. It came out, so it's just been, you know, a great run with the Dead Daisies, and still going strong. We got a bunch of surprises for this year, and we're getting ready to do dates. Like we talked about, people should go to the deaddaisies.com and check it out. And there's always some fun, you know. We have great social media, so there's a lot of cool outside things that are filmed, and just funny stuff that people
Yeah,
might
you
think.
guys do a good job with that. I always say, I'm going to catch up and watch this later because I know you did kind of like almost a documentary type thing in a way, that I got to catch. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's,
there's something coming that's a documentary. But we got a new video coming out that's for a ballad, and it's a song called "A Love That Will Never Be," and it's the Dead Daisies. We don't do ballads. We just never have been into it. But Karabi brought the song in, and it was just really good. And it's got flair of, like, it's got a little bit of the Allman Brothers, it's got a little bit of the Eagles, it's got a little bit of the Black Crowes, and a little bit of Bad Company. So it's a cool song. So we're hoping that that's going to drop soon. So maybe by the time that people hear this podcast, it'll be coming out.
awesome. Awesome. Well, you know, and when you talk ballady or whatever, you know, one of your softer songs, it's still a rocker, but from "Make Some Noise," "Song and a Prayer." What a
Yeah,
fantastic freaking song that is.
yeah, I love that song.
Me too.
It's great. That was it was a it turned into a single, and I'll tell you what made it was the little hook line in the beginning, the guitar line. Originally, it was just starting off as a rock song, regular album track. And Marty said, I was doing guitars in one studio and Marty was doing vocals in another studio, and him and Karabi were working together, and one of them suggested that I put an overdub in the chorus, like a little arpeggiated part. So I worked on something, I put it down, and then Marty, being the creative guy that he is, he grabbed that track isolated, and it was in a different key. The chorus was in a different key. He put it into this thing and transposed it to the intro key of the song, and made that the intro of the song, this little kind of almost slash "Sweet Child of Mine" type of part.
Mhm.
And that made it into a big hook. You know, that made the song like, oh, this is something really catchy, you know. And then that inspired the lyric to be a little bit more catchy, and the whole thing turned into being a single. It was great.
Yeah, yeah. That was. I mean, I love that whole album, "Make Some Noise," including the title track. But that "Song and a Prayer," man. When I first got the album and had my chance, I always like when I get new records, I like to try to sit down and listen to them old school meaning
Yeah.
side to side, not just a bunch of singles. Listen to one here, one there. I like to. So when that
That's good.
came, and that was a great package you guys did for that record too. I loved that I was able to buy the vinyl and have a CD version included with the
Yeah.
vinyl version. That was
Yeah.
perfect for me because I could listen to it at home on vinyl and I could throw it in my car because my car at that time still had a CD player. So it was great.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I did that first run through of the record and sat down, listened to the whole thing, I'm loving it all. But there was something about that song and a prayer that before I left my little music listening room where my turntable was set up, I had to just play that track one more time for myself. So I
Awesome.
put the needle back on that song. And then this time I was listening on my big speakers, but there was just something, I don't know what, I can't even explain it, but it just grabbed me somehow emotionally. So this time I plugged my headphones into my amp and listened to it again through the headphones. And boy, that song just killed me. And then when I got to see you guys play it live too, which was a thrill. It was, yeah, just, that's a fantastic
Awesome, man.
song.
Well,
But
thank you. I mean, that album was really good. And then we did Burn It Down, and then the last album that we did with John, Light 'Em Up, is solid. I think with John and Marty and I together, David had some great song ideas. It just and Michael Devin has a song on the new album that is really badass. I think you were asking me about maybe playing a song.
yes.
Maybe I'm gonna
And
I'm
in
gonna
fact,
play
this is a
that.
perfect segue because I know we've been talking a while. So, yes, I did want to have you because so far on my weekly music show, I've played Light 'Em Up, I've played Times Are Changing, I've played I'm Gonna Ride, and I've played Back to Zero. Those are the
Okay,
ones I've played so far.
right on. Back to Zero is cool. That's very different for us. That was like I didn't know Marty again helped make that into a good song. It was a
The chorus
song. Yeah,
stays in your head.
yeah. That was originally a riff. It was so funny. That descending riff was a riff that and keep in mind I'm talking about a riff that I wrote, but it could have been written by any of us. John writes great riffs. Michael Devin too. The song I'm going to tell you, but that riff for Zero was a riff that I played for David years ago, and he's like, "Oh, Douglas, I'll have that one. I'll have that. I'll really make a meal out of that." And it just we never went back to it. We always forgot about it. We probably would have made it, but I played it for Marty, and he really liked it. And I thought it's just a riff, kind of like a little riff where you do a throwaway line on it or whatever. And he made that the chorus hook, that riff, and made a vocal that worked on it. I was flabbergasted. But he's that talented. He's just got great ideas when it comes to songs and
Right.
parts. But the song I want you to play.
Yes.
So
I'm
you
gonna write
said
it down.
at the end I want you to pick a song to play, and I want you to play a song that was written by Michael Devin, and we kind of tweaked it from there. But it's called "My Way or the Highway,"
All
and
right.
it's not it's an album cut probably or whatever, but it's just a badass riff, and it's my way or the fucking highway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I will definitely do that. And then, even though I did tell you that was going to want you to pick out a song, you also mentioned Love That'll Never Be might
Yeah.
be up, because as we chat today, I'm thinking I'm going to put our conversation all together and probably have it out toward the end of this week.
Cool.
So just in case, maybe I'll add that as well. So we'll do
All right.
your pick, and then we'll also add Love That'll Never Be in case the video's out by then as well.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, Ralph, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's a great show, and obviously you make it really interesting because we were talking about doing the half hour. I think we did an hour.
We're way beyond. That's why I was like, I know we got to wrap this up. But I didn't want to interrupt you. I didn't want to kill your train of thought. So I'm like, I'm just going to be quiet and let you talk. But no, it's been great having you too, Doug. I appreciate you really taking the time to do this. When I asked you, being what you've just been through the last 3 months, I wasn't sure how you'd feel about doing something like this. but you didn't hesitate. You're like, yeah, man, I'm in. So thanks for doing this, because I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and love the Dead Daisies stuff. I've seen the Dead Daisies a few times. In fact, this was another cool thing you guys did in 2022, including the T-shirt and the ticket.
Nice.
Combined. But yeah, great. I was disappointed when Glenn Hughes wasn't able to tour, but we got Dino
Yeah.
instead. I don't know how you guys got Dino to do it, but he was fantastic. Dino,
He's a powerhouse, that kid. He's a powerhouse. But yeah, Glenn is. You'll be able to see Glenn this year. He's going to be doing some Black Country Communion stuff and also probably solo stuff. So he'll be out.
I think in the summer he's going out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, everybody, we've been talking with Doug Aldrich, currently of the Dead Daisies. You heard us talking about his background, some of the things he's been involved with over his career. Killer player here. And a great guy, nice guy. Really appreciate you being here. Check out the deaddaisies.com. If you don't already have Light 'Em Up, it came out in September, so you should have it in your collection already. But if you don't, pick up a copy of Light 'Em Up. And right now we're going to crank up the song Doug just mentioned, My Way and the Highway, and then stick around for another song after that, everybody. And again, thank you, Doug, for being on Radio Bypass.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ralph.